Now, with this kind of issues in Nairobi, we need to think about what kind of community we as Mavuno Church want to be, in our interaction with the city of Nairobi. As Christians, we have this tendency, and the tendency is to separate the issues that are happening in our society with our Christianity. We want someone else to sort it out and not us. We do not associate that we as Christians can do something about it. We feel like it's enough for us to just be born again. And if you feel a little bit more fearless, we have, a Bible study at work. And you have it with your fellow Christians. You all go gather and, just have your own Bible study. But for many of us, we have excuses, we have arguments that, we can say that, I don't want to be engaged. And all these are valid. For some of us, when I thought about this, I thought about myself, how do I feel about the issues in this society? First of all, I am busy. Anybody feel me? I am so stretched. There's so much going on in life that I cannot even afford to think about the other issues, let alone be engaged in it. The other day I found myself just wondering, is there an M-Pesa line we can send to just so that that issue can be sorted? That is the extent of how I want to deal with it. We feel like we are helpless, that there's nothing we can do. We watch the schools burning, and every day there's something, and we'll tweet about it and post on Facebook and make a comment about it. School is burning, Nairobi burning, Kenya burning. But we're very disconnected, and we're doing nothing about it. The focus has become on me. What is in it for me? How can I get ahead? And if it has nothing to do with me or my family, then I don't need to put or participate in it. But as we learned last month, that God is calling us to glow. In this series, I Am Legend, we will attempt to tackle that, and I trust by the time that we are done with this series, we will understand exactly what God is asking of us in terms of glowing. Now, our city, Nairobi, is a very, very, it has a lot of opportunities. It has a lot of opportunities. It presents, so many things and so many dynamics that, that say that we need to engage in it. The first thing is that security and stability. Now, when we think of the city, we don't think, or rather, when we think of our city, we don't think of security and stability. But when you think about it, when the cities were formed, because of the gathering of so many people, we had to create some kind of law and some kind of order in order to be able to govern and for people to be able to live in harmony, so that we can be able to go in a certain direction. Now, this is the same of our city. In our city, we have roads, we have homes, we have, a sewer system, we have, a water system, we have electricity, we have a communication system, and all these things allow us to be stable. All these things allow us to move in harmony. Now, the second thing is diversity. In our city, there's a vast array of cultures. There's Kenyans from different places. There's Taita. Some of the Mijikenda tribes live right here. We have people from Western. We have people from Nyanza. We have people from Eastern. We have people from Central. We have so many from the Rift Valley. But at the same time, it's diverse in in the usage of our city. In this place, you have a place to work. You have places to learn. You have places to shop. And I know my wife is here and she got excited about that. But there is, all this kind of diversity that allow us to live in this city and allow us to enjoy this city. We have places that we can learn. In fact, we are in the midst of one of our learning institutions in this country. The third thing a city presents is productivity and creativity. Because the city attracts all sorts of people, all sorts of mind. When we come together and talk to each other, there's that stimulation of progressive ideas, of creative ideas, and it allows us to create bigger and better things. We have good examples like the iHub, a creative, space for IT guys. They come up with all sorts of things. Even hackers join that space. We have Power 254. A place for creatives to come and think up amazing things that can, change our city. But on the flip side, Nairobi can feel like a harsh and hostile environment. It can feel like an urban jungle, just full of concrete and steel. This is a place where there's lots of people suffering from hunger. There's so many people who are homeless. There's people who are suffering from sickness and diseases, HIV and AIDS. It's a place where there's alcohol in abundance. Every corner we go into in Nairobi, there's a bar. And the dingier it is, the more people congregate to it. I don't get it. But the darker, the dingier it is, that's where the most cars will be found. It's a place where drugs are distributed, drugs are abused. There's so much drug addiction. It's a place where there's so much robbery. And some of us have been affected by this. It's a place filled with corruption. Let's not even go there. This is like our daily. You can't go a single day without talking about the corruption in our city. Nairobi has so much inequality. I just think of where I live. On one side of the road where I live, the apartments are decent, they're nice, they're livable, it's clean, we have waters, but on the other side of the highway, we have slums. There are people who don't have running water, there are people who don't even have sewage. These are guys who do number 2 and then toss it out. They call it the flying toilets. In our city, unfortunately, there's also tribalism. If you are from a certain part of the country, then I have my own preconceived notions of who you are, how you're supposed to act, and the things that you do, and I treat you in a certain way. In fact, a good example of this happened to me on Friday. On Friday, I got onto a bus, yes, and I sat in the front. And when I sat in the front, the guy who, how you always want to be the guy at the window seat. So the guy who was there was very comfortable where he was at, and now because I came in and pushed him, now he had to sit in the middle. The guy was kind of upset. So him and the driver start talking, and they start talking to me, but they talk in their vernacular language, their mother tongue. So they go on, and we go the whole entire length of Ngong Road until where I was alighting. And as I was alighting, I decided, I'm going to let these guys know, that in spite of what Sheila said, that I look like I'm Luya, I am not Luya. So I took out my ID card and I just told these guys, I want to share something with you. Then I said, check this document out. And they looked at what my name was and where I'm from. And they were very, very embarrassed. And it gave me a heart for the people who are not of the same tribe as they are, or the same tribe as me. This is what they experienced. I had it firsthand. Just because I didn't look like where I'm from. Many of us try to hide ourselves from this. We put walls around us. And these walls are in our homes, these walls are in our cars, these walls are in our offices, and we keep away from these urban problems. Let them be. We seek safety and security in our homes. Even our Christianity reflects the divided nature of our fallen world instead of rising above it. Mavuno downtown, this is not what God called us to be. This is not who God has called us to be. We have been called to be light to the community and revealing the dynamics of God's kingdom within our city. So how then do we live in this city? Should we resign to the laws that say that, every man for himself and the devil take the hindmost? These issues are issues that have been there since time immemorial. And God has spoken about these issues. He has given us instruction in His Word, because from the cities that began, the Babylons, the Roman Empire, Sodom and Gomorrah, these issues that we face today were also in the cities. And today we're going to see what God says about this. Turn with me to Jeremiah 29 from verse 4 to 7. Jeremiah 29 from verse 4 to 7. Before we read, allow me to give you some context to our passage. At this time, when Jeremiah spoke these words, the Israelites had been living in sin. They had done their own thing. They had chosen to worship other gods other than God. But God kept trying to woo them back. He kept trying to bring them back to Him. He kept extending grace and mercy and forgiveness and telling them, my children, I need you to worship me. But they had become too much. So judgment had been passed on them. And the kind of judgment that had been passed on them was that the Babylonians had come and run over their city. The Babylonians came and took everything in their city. They attacked them. They killed some, pillaged their homes, and looted their temples and their palaces and took everything from them. And not only did they take everything, but they took them into captivity. And this was the beginning of the Babylonian captivity. They had been here for a while, experienced the culture in Babylon, and then they were seeking God. And their prophet, the person who represents them to God, came up with these words and said, this is what God is instructing for us to do. Let's read. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and settle down. Plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters. Find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there. Do not decrease. And the final verse. And in verse 7 he says, also seek the peace and prosperity of the city, to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. At this point in time, the Jews who had been living in Babylon were experiencing the culture that is there. And it was kind of a gross culture for them. They did not know how to fit in. After all, these guys had been used to living to the law that Moses gave them from the mountain. So they were used to living a certain way. And it was a way that was proper, a way that made sense, and a way that pleased God. But in the land that they were in, they had to worship other gods. There was so much that was happening that did not that went against their cultures, their ways, and their norms. And they were tired of it. They were demoralized with life. They were giving up on life. They were feeling helpless. They were discouraged. They had the right to be uninspired, to be unengaged. It was these people in exile. Even the prophet Jeremiah was in jail when he gave this word to them. But when we read from verse 4 to 7, please put it up. When we read from verse 4 to 7, we see that Jeremiah is telling them to seek the prosperity and the peace. Seek the prosperity and the peace of the city, and not just their personal gain. In this word, he uses the word peace, and in the Hebrew, it's actually shalom. Now, for us, we know shalom to be peace be with you. And if you feel or you want to feel holy, you always want to tell somebody shalom. It gives you that sense of feeling, like you're in touch with God, you're in touch with Him. There's a certain thing about it, like shalom. You see, it brought a smile to them. Shalom. My dad actually, every Sunday, without fail, at 6 a.m., there will be a WhatsApp message coming in. And in fact, he takes it another level. He says, Shabbat, Shalom. And we're always like, hallelujah. But Shalom means more than peace be with you. Shalom includes economic, social, and political satisfaction. The total well-being of all creation, including our environment. This is what Jeremiah is telling them. Seek shalom. Seek prosperity for this land. Seek the social, political prosperity of this land. Seek amazing, amazing environment, a prosperous environment in this land. Jeremiah is saying to them that now that you have gone into exile and are living in a city of inequalities, there's rich, there's poor, there's educated, there's ignorant people, there's power, there's powerful people, there's powerless people. And in order to survive in this city, you must seek the shalom of this land. You must seek the prosperity, the peace of this land. In other words, you exist in social solidarity in the city and have certain obligation as its members. You notice the words that he uses. In verse 5, he says, build. In another place, he says, plant. He says, increase. He says, seek peace. He says, pray. You prosper, your city prospers. You prosper if your city prospers. This is what Jeremiah is saying to the Israelites. Mavuno Downtown, I am here to tell you, this also applies to us. Because if Nairobi prospers, I prosper. That's the one takeout that I want you to have today. That if Nairobi prospers, I prosper. The vision of God's shalom or peace is a prophetic challenge to the city as it is right now. Seeking shalom, building shalom, creating shalom in the city calls for us to first reach a point where we can collectively agree that the gross social inequalities in our midst take away our shalom. I want you to hear this well. We are not well unless all of us are well. We are not well unless all of us are well. If Nairobi prospers, then I prosper. If Nairobi prospers, then you prosper. This is the attitude and mentality that we're supposed to take. It has got to concern us today that so many people in the city are living in poverty. I mean, we hide in a bubble, and in this bubble we have our cars, we have our nice offices, we have, our nice homes, our decent homes. But the percentage of people who are living this life compared to the ones living in poverty is a huge percentage. Some of us are blessed so much that our kids are going to private school. My son is here right now, and even as I walk to school with him, to the private school, because it's fun to walk with him and talk with him, and we go to the private school, there's so many other kids going to the free school, the one that offers free education, the public school. Way more than the ones going to his school. We don't realize that some of us are just one paycheck away from living this life. In fact, the reason you're hustling, the reason you're busy is so that you can avoid living that life. I was just thinking, we are trying hard with ourselves, we are trying hard with our children, the immediate people around in our bubble to do very well. But even as my children go to a private school, I can't help but think of all the others who are going to public school, who are way more than the ones going to the private school. The public school, there are so many that they have 50 to 60 children per class. This does not provide a conducive, atmosphere for them to learn. Not only that, because they made education free, a lot of people decided to make their schools private. So the only people who can access it is the people who have money. And the majority of our nation, the most people who live in this city can't afford to be in that place. In fact, there's a lot of children who do not go to school. I walk past them in town, especially in the evening. That's when they come out. These are the people who are going to build our nation. These are the guys we are going to call fearless influencers in the future. You have not taught them. You have not raised them. You have not given them tools to be able to lead this nation. And you expect them to do it well. You see, if it doesn't affect us, if we are in our bubble, the next generation, who is our children, our grandchildren, will be affected by this. Mavuno downtown, our competency as a city, as a nation, is based on the prosperity of the whole, not just a few. We as Christians, I have to give us some credit. We do give. We do participate in charity. But we only give of the excess. It's only what is extra that will decide, okay, I don't need this, I can do without it, that's what I'll give. Is that who God has called us to be? You see, what is required is to change the structures which allow people to live in need and which make charity necessary. We have the minds here to do that. We have the minds to do that. In the last Semon series, we say we have the Spirit who is in us, who gives us this power to be able to achieve this. If Nairobi prospers, I prosper. In fact, in Matthew 5:14 and 16, Jesus says something that is very, very powerful and that makes sense when we talk about this subject. He says in Matthew 5:14 that you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill that cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand. I wish I had something to cover up this bulb over here. And that picture is so real, so vivid, because if I stand right here, whatever this was intended to illuminate back there doesn't have the same, visual effect. But the moment I step away, you can see it clearer. This is what God is talking about right here. It says, and it gives light to all in the house. This same Bible says when Christ comes in us, we become the light. We have light. We talked about in week 2 of Be Fearless, to glow. We have been called to glow to this nation. We need to stand on that stand and illuminate the whole world. In verse 16 it says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. This is the command of the Lord. Mavuno Downtown, he tells you, build. He says, plant. He says, increase. He says, seek peace. Seek shalom. The overall well-being of our city. He says, you prosper if it prospers. But still the question begs to be asked. So how do we find an area of engagement in society that is both long-term and sustainable? The needs around are many. I've highlighted so many things that Nairobi is going through. So allow me to galvanize us towards one thing that the Mavuno family will be doing this September. You see, one of our pastors, the Reverend Linda Adolwa, did a study, and this study was for her PhD program. And in that study, she polled and talked to numerous Mavunites. And I believe there was a survey that went out. And we learned that 60% of Mavunites are engaged in society. We're actually doing something in society. But the thing is, because our efforts are all over the place, the impact is not being felt. So we, the leadership of Mavuno, have come up with this, and we are saying we are going to impact our prisons and our schools, and especially the public schools. So throughout the course of this month, we'll be talking about Spread the Love Month, which is going to be happening in September. Every weekend, we'll be visiting at one of the prisons, one of the big prisons in Nairobi. And we as Mavuno Downtown will be leading one of those efforts at Industrial Area Prison. Last time you guys showed up and we did an amazing job. But this time, we're going to do something bigger and better. So I'm calling forth for all of you who have something, resources, and not necessarily monetary, but some of us are lawyers and can help some of these inmates. Some of us are doctors. We're going to do medical clinics. Some of us have so many clothes that we have, shoes that we can give, books for some of the children in one of the prisons. And some of these prisoners are trying to get an education even while they're in prison. So it's on us. It is on us to impact our society. Let this city feel the impact of our glow. Because if Nairobi prospers, If Nairobi prospers, I want us to stand.